this is Vanessa Love, and this is my channel about the mental health field sometimes, most times. I am a mental health provider. uh, so, I wanted to talk a little bit today about the treatment of indigenous people. And it's really interesting because there is so much, and there's so much with like a bunch of other people who have lived here forever, and how we treat people who don't look like colonizers. So, a while ago, one of my friends posted a map of what the United States would look like if the tribes were able to continue, and there's a lot with that just ugh. It didn't make any sense because there's so many different tribes and there's so many different tribes in different areas, and on top of that there were tribes who moved around and did other things. So you can't just say that one area belonged to one tribe because that's not even true. The other thing is that that there were a lot of tribes that were missing from that I was like, but you know these other tribes, there's a difference between the Mohegans and the Mohicans, but what about the Narragansett? What about the Pequots? There's so many in a tiny area, and I going out to California to go to high school. There were the Ohlone, and I want to say that Chibbo was maybe a French explorer, but that also, my recollection isn't great, but that might also have been a one of the tribes. So there were all these things that were happening before colonizers came in. But I do want to say that California was not only colonized by England. California was a part of Mexico, so Father Sierra went up the coast making missions to convert natives. So there's all sorts of things that I'm like, oh god, okay. So one of the things that's important to note is that in the 1920s there was this thing called the Dawes Rolls. Dawes Roll. In essence, that is technically, it's Dawes Rolls. That is technically a, basically the list of known tribes people. However, because it's also colonizers with the indigenous. Well, it was also that you can pay. I believe the person's name was Dawes. You could pay Dawes to put your family on the roll. It's not very accurate, but that's what's used. So great, isn't it? And it's not it's really interesting to me because let's say, and this has actually happened, that you are a family and one of your grandparents is Irish. You could still have dual citizenship if you wanted. I know some people who just recently went through that whole process of making sure that they were regarded as a citizen in Ireland because of one grandparent being an immigrant from Ireland. Do you know how hard that is currently for the families that were listed on the Dawes roll, right? Rolls. What do they have? And then it becomes a whole thing because you can be culturally indigenous and not be considered indigenous to the government. again, isn't that lovely? Isn't that wonderful? Aren't you so glad? And then, of course, a lot of white people do things that imply that they have so little regard and so little like respect for the culture that existed here. That it's like, I mean, my family did it too. My uncle, who was an addict, uh, definitely said to me that my grandmother paid to be in a registry in Florida. It was not the Dawes Rolls, because the Dawes Rolls it ended around the time that my grandmother was born, so 1920. So she wasn't a part of it. Also, her family came like on one of the boats after the Mayflower. So like, let's not even pretend like there's any part of that history that could mean that like there was indigenous people. You know, the other set of grandparents came from Poland, like 1920 or like 1910 came from Poland. So like they didn't come. They like there's no way to have them be indigenous if both of them were on the boat from Poland. So I don't know where that came from. I don't think that any of that was true. I've done 2 DNA tests. They are not. I have no native blood whatsoever. But, if you go back 12 or over 10 generations, I am part Puerto Rican and part Mexican, but I am not about to like declare that as like something. I think there's like a little percentage of like Brazil too or something, and I just like to think of like the people who did that as men who were like let's go to China. So there are like like people who are kind of like sorry, it's funny to me that like where I'm just like, yeah, the percentage is so low. Like I'm also like 1% because of like all of the very 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 distant like Nigerian. So I'm like, oh yeah, no, okay, no, that could be very dangerous. let's not. But I have had people tell me I look indigenous, which like I am German, mostly German, like a little bit of English, a little bit of Irish, little tiny bit of Italian, and a little bit of Ashkenazi. That's it. I'm European. This is European face. This is European mix. Like, you know. Oh, it's so fun to figure all of that out. But yeah, there's no indigenous blood. And also, some of the DNA tests that you can get say that it is not available to those to figure out how much indigenous blood you have, because that's not what they're there for. There's very specific ones for that. So the other thing with that is that like there's a lot of corruption, like of cultural appropriation, you know, not the appreciation, the appropriation, right, for native culture. And it's so bastardized, especially by white people, that it is ridiculous. Like, and it started early. There is a book. I've forgotten the name, but I did have it at one point. I got rid of it. I hated it. There was a white man who went around to different tribes and befriended them. And he collected their stories and he categorized them. So, like, there were all of the... Like, I think I got through one chapter, and that chapter was about, like, the corn women. It might have been, like, corn women, corn children. And, like, I kind of wish that what he actually did was write out, like, a diary of where he had been and what he had found out about that culture and some of their lore. I would have loved that so much better. Because... like, and then like wrap it up with like, well, of course, you know, the native population that was more like in Omaha, right, like Nebraska, whatever, that they would have been more like had more corn related folklore because that's what they were growing, because that's what grows there abundantly, compared to like, you know, the California Ohlone. They wouldn't necessarily have, you know, corn. Maybe they did, but like, I know that they like made like, they made boats out of thistle or reed. So like, maybe they were more like about fishing, and like, so maybe there was more lore about that with the Ohlone than there was with like, you know, any of the tribes in Nebraska, right? So like, you know, compare contrast instead of just being like, this culture had this culture had this culture had this. That's exactly what it was, and I could not take it after a while. The other thing that I find hilarious is that there are these oracle cards, tarot cards, whatever you want to say. There's cards, and they're called the medicine cards, and they say, oh, it's by the native tribes. They came together and they created the animal medicine cards. There's no tribe attributed to that. There is, and like, let me tell you that there are there's big differences between many of the cultures, many of the tribes, and like owls, snakes, foxes, wolves, any of that stuff. So like when people say, oh, it's by the tribes, it's by a native, you know, tribe, I totally get it. This is exactly what I would do if I was a tribes person. I'd be like, oh yeah, and we skin heads, and, you know, I've seen the shrunken heads myself, and, you know, I'd be like, oh yes, the skunk is very, very important in our, you know, and like, I would just bullshit with people and be like, oh yes, it's very important, very important. Whenever you see a skunk, that is your great grandmother coming to you and say, like, I would just make shit up and saying that she's thinking of you, you know, like, you know, and like the perfume that's in the air. I would fuck with people. So I totally understand like people not, you know, wanting to, you know, like be that way, like not wanting to have people like take their culture, and like not show any appreciation for it and just go, you know, like that's so, it's so fucked up in so many different ways that it's like, right. So I do know the history of the Dreamcatchers. It's a very beautiful history. Like if you ever have a chance to just like sit down and read about it, like the Ojibwe, like they created like the mother, like the mothers, the female elders of the community would make those for the children so that like their dreams could catch onto the little feathers and climb up and get stuck, and that, you know, the evil spirits would be warded off. It's a very beautiful thing. I have learned how to do this because there was someone who knew how to do it, and did it with oh my gosh, filament, the filament that lights up and everything, and it was beautiful. It was like, and time them out. Oh my god, I want to do it. I have done one that did light up, and it really was beautiful. Like my friend bought that one for me. She was so excited, and like I still have some of the stuff for that. I would never call them Dreamcatchers though, because I'm not indigenous, so they're Dreamweavers. I probably have some. I don't know if I don't think that I ever listed them on eBay, but like if you ever need, you know, something like that, I gotta get this, but like if you ever need something like that, I will have that eventually on eBay. I gotta run. I will talk with you soon. Bye.